Hello and welcome to Antimatter Skunkworks. If you're here, there's a good chance you're thinking about building your own bike trailer. And if you are, well, then let me just start right away by telling you why this video will be different than any of the other ones you've watched. I know, I think I watched all of them. I think I watched maybe 50 different videos on or closely related to the topic. But not one of them ever explained like how wide to make it, how big a tires, where the wheels should go, where the axles should go, any of that stuff, how long to make the tongue. So I intend to try and tell you a little bit of that information. I should preface it by saying that it really depends a lot on the use of the cart. In my case, I'm building one specifically just to go get groceries. I live in the suburbs. I don't ride very far. The ground is flat, sidewalks everywhere, streets. I might go into the grass occasionally to avoid a pedestrian, and I might encounter a curb or two. That's it. So if you're looking for something sort of off-road, well, I can't really help you there. I wouldn't go away just yet, though, because there is a lot of information in here that might apply to like any situation. So let's get started. So there are two kinds of trailers, a single wheel and a double wheel. Although I guess there's really nothing preventing you from having 3 or even 4 wheels, kind of like a wagon. And technically, you could have like 6, 8 wheels. Ooh, 8 wheels with like an articulating sort of two kinds of carts, single wheel and double wheel. The advantages of the single wheel are that it uses less parts. And I mentioned I had 2 wheels already and I was going to use them, but one of the wheels was kind of messed up, and I actually briefly considered doing the single wheel version because then I could just use the wheel I had. But instead I wound up buying a second identical wheel, so now I got 2 wheels that work perfectly. And the reason is that a single wheel design leans with the bicycle. So it's kind of an advantage in a couple of ways. One is that the trailer hitch usually has to be designed with 3 degrees of freedom, 1 in each axis, yaw, pitch, and roll. You can eliminate one of those axes, the roll, because the bike doesn't need to do this because the hitch doesn't need to do this relative to the bike because they both go over together, right? But what that does is it causes the trailer to lean into the corners just like the bicycle. If you have a low center of gravity for that, then you can tell that when the bike leans, the lower side actually can get really close to the ground, and you might hit on curbs or other things. If you raise it up to prevent that from happening, then you've got a higher center of gravity, and that trailer kind of wants to pull the bike over, from what I understand. Once again, I've never actually had a trailer or ridden a bicycle with a trailer before, so I have a friend who has this design, and I heard through my various research that that kind of wants to pull you over too, since it attaches so high up underneath the seat there that when you go to turn, it has an effect on the lean. My buddy says he doesn't notice it at all, so again, all this stuff may just be BS. In my case, however, the fact that it leaned meant that you really have to kind of secure your load, because I didn't want anything shifting when I went into turns. And securing bananas or eggs like really well, not such a great thing. So I decided to go with the 2-wheel design so that my platform always remains level. That does have a few costs that I'll explore along the way with this video, but basically that's why I chose the 2-wheel design. So I set up a rudimentary fence, just made this really quick, and it's working great. I got 3 pieces so far. I need 6, so a couple more cuts. It's going really fast. It's hard to believe it, but that's virtually all of the aluminum for the cart. Alright, it's coming along. Most of the base frame is done. Just have the back to go, but the back gets a piece here and a piece there, and then the piece in between bolts into place. That way I can slide a new panel in if I need it. And there's the base frame for the chassis done. Now all I have to do is build the sides. A welder would not probably call these welds. Despite that, these are some of the best welds I've ever done. Look, right through here, I actually showed moments of adequacy. Well, hopefully it doesn't fall apart. None of the other stuff I've made has fallen apart despite how bad it looked, so hopefully this will last. And I got so excited I just had to stick the wheels in there. I mean, they're not attached or anything, it's just stuck them in there, and it's pretty cool actually. One thing I can say that I'm not happy about, and it's all because of the wheels, is this cart seems very inefficient to me. It's very big for a relatively small cargo area. Don't forget, this is the cargo area. I could get more here and here, but the truth is it's easier to keep it a rectangle, and I think I'm gonna put something, it'll add some weight, but like a little box here, probably one on the other side as well, and maybe we can stick our anything that can't get really wet or fly away. Like we have bags that we use. You know, when we go to the grocery store, you bring your own bags, right? And then you don't use as many plastic bags, which is kind of nice. And I think they'll fold up and put in there and fit in there on both sides, and I can put a little lid and stuff. That'll add weight, of course, but I can also do that later. I don't intend to paint this thing, at least not right away. I want to use it for a while, and if anything breaks, then I won't have to you know, grind paint off in order to weld to it again. Also, if I want to make any changes, I can make changes and then make sure I get it solidified, and then I'll paint it. Okay, so there are the first 4 upright posts. Then it'll go something like this. There'll be a couple more supports there, and then of course it comes across there. So I found the perfect material, I think, for the floor of the trailer. It's I think it's polycarbonate. It doesn't feel like polycarbonate, but that's what they're usually made out of. I'll have to look it up. Anyway, it's kind of a honeycomb. It's fairly lightweight, and it's a honeycomb material, so it's really thick, which makes it stiff, and the surface is great for you know, just washing it off easily. Like you can see, it's got some stuff on there. I'm pretty sure that'll come right off. And the beauty of it was free, because my neighbor was throwing it away. At least I think he was throwing it away. I found it locked in the shed in his backyard. So yeah, free. Okay, and that's more or less the finished structure. I do have to grind off some of the really ugly welds down a little bit. But it's all pretty much done. This back piece bolts in so that can slide out, as I mentioned. The welds are not great, but I don't think I'm going to try and grind them down. I'm just going to leave it. It's pretty sturdy. This one's really hot. Let me see. Yeah, it's good. I think it'll be fine for groceries. I mean, it's not you know, it's not a lot of weight. So that's it. That's all as far as I can go until the little hitch that goes on the back of my bicycle arrives. That will set the height, and then I'll know where to mount the wheels, because I may have to come up a little bit or down a little bit, because I want that to be even. Alright, so I never really considered how I do the sides. I mean, I kind of did. I wanted to use fabric, but it became more apparent that the fabric wasn't really going to work. I put some heavy gallons in there, and it didn't seem like that was going to work, so I decided that also I have some plastic, and I thought I could rivet it on, since you can't weld it, but I can't get in here because this bar is in the way to drill a hole. So that was a problem for screwing anything on, or riveting anything on, or whatever. It all takes holes, right? So the more I thought about it, the more I realized just more aluminum was the answer, because I can tack this on here, but I can also access this with a welder, where I can't access it with a drill. So I just decided more aluminum, better to go. Plus I can paint it. The plastic I have doesn't seem like it's going to really take paint very well. So I'm going to do this. I didn't have enough to cover the entire side, so I had to cut it a little bit short. But I figured, well, that might be good, because it'll still give me the rails to wrap something around and go between here maybe. So I had a contingency plan in case this didn't work out so well. I was going to roll this upward, because I didn't see much difference between this pulling here and pulling up there. In fact, it seemed almost better up, because any torque would be going this way, which has a tendency to tighten bolts. But I think it's tight enough where it isn't really going to move. This is very solid. But I couldn't roll it up, because then this part hits here where it bows, you know, out a little bit. So it's got to go basically this way. The bad news is it's almost exactly in line, and I can't really, the trailer has to come up a little bit because these wheels are just laying right on top of the, hopefully you can see that there. I can't see the screen. Yeah. And so it's got to come down a little bit when I make some kind of a bracket for it, right? Which means that the cart comes up a little tiny bit, which means this no longer matches. Except one thing. This bike is leaning. It's leaning on its kickstand. So if I bring it in and stand it up, you'll notice it needs to come up a little bit. And that may be just the right amount. So if I mount those wheels, and that's the whole purpose of this, more or less, if I mount those wheels as close to the bottom of this rail as I can, just really close, just enough for the nuts to clear, you know, so I can get wrenches on them and stuff, that'll put this bar more or less in line. And even if it's up a little bit, the part that actually attaches to it I could put down a little bit, and I think I can get there very, very well. So I think this is actually kind of a win. So even though those wheels aren't on, this is kind of what the cart's going to look like. And it looks bigger now that it's behind the bike. And I think that's a pretty good amount of cargo space. Let's talk wheels. I think it's important because it drove a lot of the design decisions on my cart, and it might drive the design decisions on yours. There are essentially three kinds of wheels that you're going to find. The first is a hollow shaft, which I like because you can put a shaft through it and go across both wheels and supply a lot of support for your design. Gives you some strength there. Another kind is similar. It's hollow on the inside and goes on a shaft, but then it's got sort of a button on the end that snaps it into place. These are kind of nice because you can just press that button and pop the wheel off very easily. However, I think a lot of times those aren't used with the shaft going all the way across. If you can, I would recommend doing that. And the third kind is the kind that I have. Let me show you. This is essentially a bicycle wheel, and you can see it has its own shaft. It's a short shaft that goes through both sides, and it has advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of this are that you can, when you put this on, you can tighten this nut down and pretty much as tight as you want, and the wheel will still function like normal. The disadvantage is that this shaft can't really be removed. I thought, because I wanted to drive a shaft all the way across and then have my cart with no structure out here like this. This bar out here wouldn't exist. It would just be the wheel. But when I took the shaft out to try and drive an axle all the way through, or at least I started to, what I found was that there are individual loose ball bearings in here, and I have a lot of bad luck trying to mess with those bearings without losing them and not getting them in right, and it's just a horror show. Not to mention, makes the wheel difficult to get off and on, something I may have to do frequently. So that means it needs to be used sort of as is. In order to design the cart, as I just mentioned, where there's no structure out here, that puts the wheel in what's called single shear. It means you're supporting the wheel on only one side. That makes it want to flex when you put a lot of weight on that side. In fact, I did this, have personal experience with it. I used it in single shear on a disc golf cart. This is same size wheel, and you can maybe tell this shaft is bent. So these wheels are best used in what we call double shear, which is where you have support on this side and on this side, like the forks of a bike. Well, in order to put this wheel in double shear, I had to come up with that piece of metal on the outside, and that made my cart effectively wider than I wanted it. I therefore recommend that you get the kind of wheel that has a hollow, hollow bearing, so that you can put the shaft all the way through if you have a choice, or maybe those pop-on ones if you can find out. I'm not really sure what the shaft looks like with those ones with the button on it that you press and pull them off. That may be some kind of proprietary thing. I really don't know. But if you don't, and you pick this kind of wheel, I highly recommend you load it in double shear as it's intended, so that you don't get this kind of issue with the bent shaft. The only other thing to recommend regarding the wheel would be the size. This is a 20-inch wheel. It's strange. I know lots about cars. I fix them, I design parts for them, I have stuff made, I do all kinds of things, but bicycles baffle me somehow. And I just assumed that these were 16-inch wheels because when I measured from here to here, the rim size is 16 inches. But printed on the wheel is 20 inches. So I guess bicycle tires or wheels are measured from the overall diameter, not the rim size. So this is in fact a 20-inch wheel. I think ideal would be a 16-inch wheel. I don't think you need to be quite this big. It would take up a little less space. I think it'll still handle the load just fine, and it'll be lighter weight. So regarding size, I would say 16. Oh yeah, one more thing to mention about wheels. My cart, I believe, is very rigid, and the wheels that I just showed you are actually solid wheels. There's no inner tube in there. So that's an advantage because they can't go flat then, right? But it's a disadvantage too because they're a little bit stiffer, and when you have air in a tire, it can actually give you a little bit of spring. In fact, an engineer would model that as a spring. Well, that spring, especially depending on how you inflate it, can add a little bit of shock absorption to your cargo load. And I think that my load's going to be vibrating all over the place. I think I've got a very stiff suspension because there is no suspension, and that might be a bit of a problem. I'll record some video and show you. But I kind of think just intuitively right now, and from having looked at a lot of other people's finished carts and them riding them around, that if you could put some kind of a suspension on your trailer, that might actually be pretty good if you're hauling things like eggs. So just a thought. I'm not doing that, but I may regret it. We'll see. Time will tell. Alright, I'm going to try and weld thick metal to very thin metal. This could, and knowing me, probably will go very badly. Okay, I was very careful and it worked out pretty well. I mean, you may think this looks like crap, but for me this is really good, especially right through there. Of course, the mistake I did make was I didn't take off the sticker underneath, and now it's smoking. And it's probably going to be a lot harder to get off. I'll probably put a couple of tacks here on this side, just so it's not all secured only on one side. I may even put a little gussets in there. We'll see. But I need to make sure I leave room for the nut to go on. Anyway, I'm very happy with that. I hope it's strong enough. Like I said, I was thinking about using steel, so time will tell. This is a very exciting moment for me, guys. I'm going to put the wheels on for the first time. Watch this. Yes. I don't remember what I did with the nuts. I'm going to have to go try and find some. And here we are. Let's talk tongue length and angle. So, I don't know. I looked on the net and I saw that a lot of these were pretty far away from the bike. I don't like that because it makes the entire thing much longer, right? But the longer it is, the further away your wheels are, the less effect bumps have. You can imagine if you made these wheels a mile away, and then you hit a 6-inch bump by the wheels, you'd hardly notice any angle here at all, right? Whereas, if you put it right here, and you went up a 6-inch bump, that's going to be a very sharp angle. So, the further away, I think the better the ride, but of course, as I mentioned, the longer the whole thing gets. I saw one that was maybe 4 inches, and I saw one that was definitely 20. I chose 10. It was just a good number for me. I don't know why, to be honest. Kind of pulled it out of my... Alright, what about this angle here? So, I've got on a 45 because 45 is something that's easy to cut. And let's see what happens if... Excuse me. If I angle the bike. That's about all I can get in. So... it would be about there. So, could you imagine, let me back off, maybe that'll help. If you turn the bike that far, that doesn't seem very far to me. So, if you're wondering the angle to make, I'm thinking 45 isn't enough. I drew 54 in my drawing, and that seemed okay. Let me try that. Alright, well there's 54. If you imagine just the bicycle like you're turning a corner, then that's what it would look like, and that may be enough. There's technically nothing preventing me from just going 90, and that would probably be the best of both worlds. The only thing is, I did it mostly for aesthetics, but also when it puts a lot of stress when you've got a structure that's 90 degrees out, it doesn't have a whole lot of resistance to bending. It's all bending basically, right? Whereas here, at least part of it is in tension, and that helps a little bit with the stresses. But again, I think the stresses are very low here. It's got wheels, so it's just the inertia basically. I'm going to say minimum of 60 degrees if you're doing this, but I think I might just go 90. To secure the handle, I put a bolt here as a pivot point, so it'll go up. Won't go up now because this is still squared off. And then I have a pin that you press a button and you stick it in and then release, and it's got a little ball and it keeps it in place. And that'll hold it in place. And the idea then is that, I actually wanted to use 2 pins, but they only have 1. So I bought a bolt instead. That'll be the hinge. I don't think I'll be doing that too often, but I can if I want to. I'll be able to pull the pin and then rotate this standing up, and then I can maybe like pull this like a cart kind of, without the bike. Well, I'm getting close to the end now. I just wanted to take another shot of the whole aluminum structure, actually aluminum and steel. I've got this mounted now. The bar is steel, as I mentioned. Just felt a little fragile using aluminum for that. I will not leave the raw metals in contact with each other because that can promote galvanic action, and I don't want it to start corroding in an accelerated manner. So they'll be painted separately, and that's enough. So there's the bolt I told you about, and there's the pin. It fits through perfectly. You can see the ball coming through the top there. And I now have to solve this panel and the back panel, and I think what I'm going to do, because I don't have any more aluminum, is I'm going to use some more of that Kydex. It's like an ABS sheet plastic, and I think I'm going to weld another support here, and then I'll bolt it on. Finally, the moment you've both been waiting for, axle placement, the definitive guide, or some crap I just made up. To find the ideal location of the axle, what you do is use an area of physics known as statics, and in this case it's pretty simple to explain in its basic form. If the trailer is attached to the bicycle, say, and it's just sitting there, then all of the forces that would cause it to move, either in translation or in rotation, have to sum to 0. Otherwise it would be in motion. And because it's not moving relative to any point, you can literally pick any point to do these calculations. It only makes sense, however, to choose a point through one of your unknowns. That way it will zero out. I'll show you what I mean. To do that, you create something called a free body diagram. That's what you see on your screen here. The gray beam in the middle is the cart, representation of the cart, and then these are all of the forces on it. Before we start with the equation, however, we should know what we're looking for. So there were no real guidelines given to me, at least not that I could find on the internet, for how much weight should be on the tongue and how much weight should be on the wheel of a bicycle cart. So I just used the weights that you find for trailers that are towed behind actual cars and trucks. And it turns out there are basically 2 forms, right? There's one where you can attach a trailer to the back of a car, like off the back bumper. And then there are some that act like a fifth wheel, and you put all the forces right over the back axle. If you don't know what a fifth wheel is, here's a picture of one. So I found two sources for what these forces should be. And you can see down here in the lower left corner, they don't 100% agree with each other, but if you see, there's kind of an overlap from one source to the other source, so I just went ahead and picked that. And I picked the fifth wheel. You can see there that because I'm putting the tongue right over the rear axle of the bicycle, I think the fifth wheel is the best representation. And 20% seems to be agreed upon by both of the sources. So moving along to the equation, here's what it would look like. So what you do is you sum all of the moments, and moment is nothing more than a force at a distance that causes it to rotate. So you just sum all these forces, and you can see here that if you consider T as the 0 point, there would be a force T unknown at 0, in this case inches, that's 0. Then you would have minus 20 pounds at 38 inches. That is the weight of the trailer empty and at the center of gravity of the trailer. I'll show you how I got the center of gravity in a minute. So right now, just take my word for it. It's roughly 38 inches. Then you have minus 100 pounds. That's the payload of the trailer, right? That's why I've been doing all my designs to handle 100 pounds. And that's at 38.5 inches. And I found that value by just placing the 100 pounds exactly in the center of the cargo area, which, you know, I've drawn that up so I know where that is. Now, technically, in statics, you would probably, that's a distributed load over the entire area, not just a single weight smack in the center, but this is already overkill for a bicycle trailer, right? So this will be close enough. And finally, you have a force W at an unknown distance, X. But it's not an unknown force, right? Because we know we want 80% of the weight to be on the wheel, and so the total weight is 100 plus 20, so 120. So 80% of 120 is 96 pounds. And if you put that, then you'd only have the one unknown of X. So if you run through that math, you can see here they have X equal to 48 inches. And that would also give you a weight on the tongue of 24 pounds. Now, if you look at that, I drew up what that would look like. And in the drawing, you can see, that's the trailers on the right and the bicycle, portion of the bicycles on the left. You can see that the wheel sticks out beyond my trailer. And I didn't really like that. I don't have that much room in my garage. I didn't want the entire, vehicle to be too long. So I decided to do what everybody else did and just put the wheel wherever I want it. So if I put the wheel as close to the 48 inches as I can get, but inside the, footprint of the trailer, I came up with that 43 inches that you saw, come up with 43 inches, which you can see here. So I decided to go ahead and run through the calculation again just to see, hey, am I anywhere near the 20%, or at least an acceptable level of, say, 10%, which is one of the values that seems to be the minimum value of the two sources I found. And when I ran through those equations, it's exactly the same as what I did before. You can see here that I came in just over the wire, right? So this should be just fine. So how did I get the center of gravity location? So in this drawing, you can see here, I have basically three parts to my trailer: the blue, the red, and the green. So the blue is steel, and I knew the weight of the steel because I had it in the garage. I knew I was going to use it. And I just called its center of gravity to be at the center of the length I knew that was going to be. Now that was off a little bit, actually. And in fact, all of this is off a little bit. But I've been driving around with the trailer now, and it's been fine. So, as it would be if you didn't do all these equations, I imagine. But anyway, I just took that weight at the center. And then I didn't know the weight of the aluminum for the cart, the red part here in the drawing. But I did know what I had ordered and all the dimensions, so I just found out online how much it weighed per inch in each part, and I summed it all up. Plus, I knew how much I was going to use of the bottom part that I got from my neighbor. It was 3 pounds, so I just threw that in there as well, and I just called it that at the center there. And then I took the weight of the wheels, which each one was worth 4.2 pounds, and I put them at 43 inches because I had already gone through that part. Sort of did this stuff out of order. And if you run it through this equation here on the right, which is very similar to the moment equation, the only difference is when you get done, you divide it by the total weight of the cart, which at that time was 20.1 pounds. And that gave me a total of 37.7, or basically 38 inches. So that's how you find the center of gravity of your cart. I don't know if you need all this. I don't think it's really necessary, but hey, if you don't know where to put it, the equations are really easy to do. This didn't take long at all, really. And it's kind of fun. As you saw me design, I made this trailer for this bike, and as you can see, because of the 90 degree here, I can pretty much turn the whole bike almost 90 degrees with no problem, so that's very easy to maneuver about. But after riding the bike in a pretty strong wind and with a heavy load, I was kind of struggling, and I don't know, I started getting this idea about getting an e-bike. And when I did that, I bought an e-bike. And I put a hitch on here so I could haul the groceries using the e-bike and maybe give myself a little bit of an assist. And let me show you the problem I encountered with that you may encounter with more modern bikes that have disc brakes. So you can see, as you can see, turning this far is pretty good. There's even a little extra room to go pretty far that direction. However, when you go this far, you get right there. And hopefully you can see that. I'll bring you in. The disc brake wants to hit this bar here. I did actually hit it, but it doesn't seem to have done any real damage. I don't feel anything in the brake, but you can see how it took the plastic off. So that design is not going to work. What might work is putting this off of the end of this bar. That would move the bar up to here and give it a lot more room before it hit anything. The only problem with that is if you mount this in the end, you'll be putting the rod end in bending, which isn't a great thing to do. In fact, you can look up literally that, rod end in bending, or even REIB, and it'll tell you why that's not a good thing. So I thought maybe what I could do is just weld a loop on the end of this guy, and then put it on. It would stick out of it, and that would be fine. The only problem with it that I don't like about it is one time when the bike fell over, this just sort of tightened and pretty much saved the day. If I put a loop there, it won't be able to do that, and I'm afraid it will either damage the cart or the hitch or the bike. So I'll have to see. I think like a half of a chain link is round enough, is rounded in all corners enough where when it's in here, it would give it freedom of movement. So I think that might be the way to go. It's kind of the equivalent of putting this guy in the end. Still have to figure that out. I'll let you know what I come up with. The other thing I wanted to mention was, now that I've ridden this a few times, this 90 degree is okay, but what I found is I've touched the back of my calf getting off the bike. It's never been a problem, but the fact that I touched it tells me that there's a chance, if I do it just wrong, I'm going to hit the back of my calf, and it's going to be very uncomfortable. So if you're thinking about a 90 degree, I'm thinking you might want to make it just a little bit less, close to 90, to give yourself a lot of range of motion in here, but not maybe exactly 90. You might want to experiment with that. I think I mentioned earlier about 60 degrees. That might be a good number. You'll have to figure it out for yourself, but I just want to let you know that is a possible issue here. The other problem I've encountered is, you can see how this big old nasty ugly stupid thing on here, that's just temporary until I figure something out, but the kickstand being mounted so far back hits on the trailer hitch here, and it scratches that up and it makes noise and rattles around. It just isn't a good idea. So I need to come up with another idea, either to mount the kickstand somewhere else, or maybe come with some kind of a standoff that comes down and holds it out of the way. I don't know. I'm still working on that idea. The other thing is, because of the design, it bolts on here. Some of them grab the bar, in which case you could sort of shift it up probably. I've got wire down there, and it's made like this. I would need to buy a different one, but those wires are going to be in the way, I think. So Again, working on that idea. So these are things you might want to worry about or consider if you're building your own trailer. Finally, I wanted to keep the top flat in case I decide to come up maybe with a hardcover, or if maybe I was hauling something too big for the cart. I think that would be maybe difficult, but not too bad, right? If it stuck out this far, this far, on either side, that would be too big for the cart, but it wouldn't be so big that you couldn't still transport it. And that's why I also wanted to keep the top below the level of the wheel, so that if I put something on top that was flat across there, the wheel wouldn't hit it either. So that's another consideration for you. Alright, so I pulled my little plastic piece out of the end there and pulled off the Heim joint. And what I liked about the Heim joint is you can see I actually put I sort of 3D printed a little plastic piece to go inside so that it fit perfectly on the pin in the bike, and that kept it from like banging, you know. But I need to come out this way, I think, to solve my problem. But you don't want to use this rod end like that. That's putting it in bending. So I decided what I'm going to do instead is just take a chain link and weld it in there, and that will be basically my new connection. It's cheaper and simpler. I think it solves my problem of brake disc interfering. So I'm gonna grind all this stuff off, get to welding. Alright, so I welded on the piece of chain, and I put the other piece this way to minimize the hole and minimize the rattling around. It's not real pretty, like most things on this, but it'll work. I've already tried it out. It gets much better turn radius now. It doesn't drag on the disc. So I am calling this finished. Alright, sorry it's a little dark back there. My bicycle's jammed behind the car, but I wanted to just show you this part here. After some use, you can see it's got a bend in it. So that's gonna fail eventually. I'm not sure what to do about that, to be honest. Probably because I'm hauling kind of a lot. Usually I have nearly 100 pounds on there. I don't know, whatever that is, 42 kilos or something. Anyway, I like the fact that it has a built-in safety, this little guy here, that swings around, holds it in. I mean, I could just drop a bolt in there, something strong like stainless or something, I don't know. A grade 8 bolt. I could even drill it out and make it thicker, but I need, you know, kind of like this, I'd like to find another one that's stronger, because I think that's really the only problem, is if it were stronger it would hold it. Alright, so this is hanging from the ceiling, which is why it looks so weird. I'm really close here, but I'm too lazy to take it down. But I did want to address a couple more things. First, I never talked about this loop that I put in at the top, and you can see I've got this wire around it too, right? So that was basically like they do on a boat trailer or something. I wanted to make sure that I had a secondary form to hold it in place in case, you know, the pin broke or something. At first I was not maybe trusting my welds completely, so I wasn't 100% certain that that was going to be okay, which of course it is. My welds are usually pretty strong, they're just kind of ugly. But just in case, I just pictured the cart rolling into traffic and getting hit by a car and then, you know, chaos. So I thought it'd be a good idea to put this, you know, strap on there, and it also gives me a way to lock. I put a lock through there. Oh, actually you can see the lock is right here. I put a lock on there, and that locks it to the bike, so people can't just sort of walk off with it when I'm at the grocery store or something like that. So it pulls double duty, and I think it's a really good idea. If you do that, this loop needs to be pretty big, kind of like I've made it, because you know, you need enough room to get the lanyard through and the lock through, and you may want to run it more than one time, that kind of thing. It is bent because when I turned with the new design, I sort of crushed it with the trailer hitch. But anyway, I would consider something like that. It's also kind of thin. I think I'd have made it maybe a little bit thicker. But anyway, I think it's a really good idea to have some kind of a secondary securing feature on it. I also didn't address the paint job. So the reason it's painted this way is because these were paints I had. And so a lot of things I do are like that. You know, I have the paint, and that's why I used it. But also, remember, it's more of a silvery kind of color, and the bike that it was made for was silver. So I painted it before I bought the e-bike. And You can see I was able to paint on the plastic I was concerned I couldn't paint for. This side takes paint a little bit better. This side's like really shiny, and I don't think it takes the paint very well. So, but it did kind of work out, so I really like that. The cargo net I bought on, I think it's TEMU. It's super, super duper cheap, and it's supposed to go in the back of an SUV, which is why it's kind of a pouch. Doesn't really sort of stretch over very well, but it's okay. It still holds stuff in and it keeps it from flying away when necessary. These things I also got, I think I just got them on Amazon. They're just like cereal containers, you know. But I had to put these straps on. They're actual leather, and I just literally bolted it at the top here and then cut it up, and this is just the buckle that came with it. Because these fell out and they broke, you can see the top ones, actually that tab sticks out permanently now because it fell out. So I have these here, and these came in handy actually because we do put things in there that are small, you know. You might want to put some, I can't remember what we put in there. I didn't put my wallet in there because I always keep my wallet on me, but some sunglasses I want to say, and the lock. I had something in the back, and the lock's super heavy because I didn't want anybody wandering off with my e-bike. So it was banging against something, I think, when I just threw it in the back. And so I put it in there. So anyway, these are pretty handy. I secured the cargo net with these. These are removable zip ties. You can see there's a little tab on them right there. So they're easy to get back off. But I pretty much just leave it this way and going around the edges. That's it, I think. I'm really happy with it. I use it all the time. Alright, well, that's the end of the video. I hope that helps somebody decide how to make various choices when building a bike trailer. I think this adds a lot of information that's not really available on other bike trailer videos. I really like the way it came out. Not sure about the paint job, but I could always paint it orange maybe to match my new bike. It doesn't really matter, but I think you get the point. Thanks for watching.